I work for DevOpsGuys. I enjoy finding problems and around the digital pipeline, how you deliver software from development into various environments and get it to production environment. In next 45 minutes, I'm just going to talk about and do a bit of demo as well. This is not more of slides. There's lot of demos in there. Hope everything works. Always, it's not the case always. So what we're going to see is source control, the environment provisioning, and maintaining the consistency. How do you maintain the consistent environments, and use the DSC resources to configure the servers, and help you all to understand how you can use Octopus in your digital pipeline, so in delivering software from development through to production. So why I've chosen this topic is, in many places you might have seen difficulties in having consistent environments, like where you will find inconsistent environments, non-reliable deployment process, and poor visibility across your pipeline. So probably some might have the views where, okay, I had a version 1 which is in test environment and version 3 in development. They wouldn't know that, okay, what version is in what. So how do you visualize them? All these things comes into play. And also many enterprise organizations, they have a long approval process around the change management and to make a change into a production environment. So one of the thing is, having inconsistent environments will delay the projects and make testers frustrated, and developers will have a classic one where it works on my machine but it doesn't work on the developers in test environments. It's because there could be a whole lot of differences in the different type of environments. So automation is good for the repeatable tasks. So humans are innovators. As we are humans, we want to automate things which are repeatable. So let's automate the things which is thinkable, not everything. Probably some scenarios where you wouldn't want to automate. So let's automate what is sensible and thinkable. Yep. So now let's take a look at the first category, which is the environment provisioning. So usually the dev test environments might look different for different people, may not be same always. I don't know how many people have experienced this, like having different. Okay, it looks like quite a lot of people have the same similar experience. So one of the challenge here is to, with all this, now let's move on to the demo, where I'm just going to I'll come back to these slides, because the reason I want to do this now, it takes about 10 minutes to provision the whole set of environments. So while I talk, we will have the environment ready and provisioned and ready. So let's go back and let's go back to the slides. Now, if you look, we are in this demo, we are using Azure ARM templates to do the provisioning of all the resources required for a dog website, which is about dog, a website to run. And it's got the templates I'm going to show you now. Is oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. So it's basically the ARM templates are a JSON format, and which can take parameters in a JSON format as well. So what we're doing here is we got a couple of resources we're going to create as part of this environment. And the new V2, Microsoft Azure V2, you have a concept of having all your resources as part of the resource groups. And you could have a resource group called test, UAT, and production, wherein you could club everything under one resource group. It could be a database, it could be application, web application, and it could be a virtual machine, storage, whatever you name it, as part of the you could have it as part of the resource group. So the nice thing about this is you got few resources here, and to provision a VM, you need to understand the dependencies as well. So a VM needs to have a network adapter. A VM needs to have a public IP address if you need to access them over the internet, and a VM might need an additional disk. So all these are dependent resources. So if you go in here, you could see for this particular network resource, there is no dependencies. And if I click on the VM, because Visual Studio has got a nice JSON outline editor, so you could view all these stuff here. So you got to depend on where it's a storage account and the network interfaces. And the network interfaces might have a dependency on having a public IP address and stuff like that. So what we do is we create this template, and then you could put it in the source control, and this one fits in as a parameters.json file. There are different ways you could deal with this, passing this as a parameters. One is like having a test parameters file and UAT parameters file and different thing. Because thing is, I started preparing for this demo, and then I thought I would share my experience of trying to do this in a different way. So this is the first time I've tried. Okay, I thought I would share during this session. So what I've done is, instead of having 3 different parameter files, or specific for environment, you could hashtag them as a variables of Octopus variables, so which would be replaced, which I will be showing in the subsequent demos, how this gets transformed when you do the deployments. So if you look this again. Okay. So now we did the deployment of the test environment, where you could see it has provisioned all the resources required for you, and it has added a tentacle, Octopus tentacle. How many of you have used Octopus? So just okay. So I don't have to explain very much about the Octopus concepts then. So this VM is what we provision now. It's been added as a tentacle. As part of the provisioning, we run some custom scripts to apply and add the tentacles to the server. So it all happens as part of their code. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to promote the whatever we so we're going to redeploy, because I was testing it before, so I'm going to redeploy to the UAT that particular version of provisioning pace of the project. So in here you can see all different tasks happening here. You can provisioning of network, public address, storage accounts, and security groups. All sort of information is being provisioned as part of this particular project. And you have variables defined in here, as I was mentioned earlier in the editor. You could see all these variables does exist in Octopus, and it gets transformed during the deployment. So that's the nature of that's the inbuilt feature in Octopus, where you could it does transforms to .config files as well as the custom files. If you specify, it does transformation of the variable replacements. So it's very simple steps where you got 2 steps. One is to create a source group, one is to extract the packages. And because Octopus takes everything as a NuGet package, and it extracts them by applying all the variable sets, and you could run the scripts accordingly to stand up an environment. So while that's happening, while UAT is provisioning, so why we have to do it this way? The question comes to everybody's mind, like, why we have to source control all these things is because now all this cloud and everything coming up, you got in a situation where you have a legacy applications, as well as you got new microservices, web apps, and cloud services. And things get bigger and bigger, it becomes very complex to orchestrate everything in one way. So by doing it this way, by creating the templates and using a parameterized way, you have the capability of provisioning a IaaS resource as well as PaaS resources, and it gives you that flexibility in terms of and all these ARM templates which Microsoft have created as idempotent, and this idempotent concept which applies across everywhere. It could be either infrastructure, it could be either the Java-based scripts you write. It has to be idempotent. Like and that's one of the key features it has got. And source control your infrastructure and simplify the orchestration, and creating the templates and having parameters and variables to pass into the templates makes it much more flexible. Like today you might have 3 sets of environment. When you get bigger and bigger, you might have like 6 different or 7 different environments, where all you need to do is you need to change your variable sets to apply the same templates to provision your infrastructure. And as I showcased earlier, like you could manage your dependencies by using the same templates as well. So which kind of gives you nice feature. So sorry. And now, as we have seen, now the provisioning for the UAT is kicked off and it's running. So while that's happening, let's go and apply the. Let's go and have a look at. Let's connect to the server, the test server, which we provision now. I think I'm not showing. So I'm going to do a PS remote session to the server. Hope it connects. Okay, it does. And then maybe I'm going to do a, before applying the DSC, I'm going to show you how many Windows features are enabled. So now you, okay, the test environment is already applied to the DSC, so it has got 45 features. So if you look, so the first piece is provisioning, and the second thing is about configuring your servers. So in configuring the servers, DSC works really well on Windows as well as cross-platform, because the resources are idempotent and it's all declarative syntax, so you don't have to know very much of the PowerShell, because the resources contains all the heavy lifting stuff, and as part of your DSC configuration, you're going to specify either the feature is present or absent and those kind of things, so that it makes it very simpler to write the configuration file. and it also does the monitoring and correction drift. If, for example, a cheeky user or tester or whoever it could be gone in and changed something accidentally, it monitors and it applies the drift of it. I think it by default monitors every 20 minutes, and it's cross-platform friendly as well. It could run from Linux or Linux to manage Windows. It could either way. And also it has got very good integration with the third-party products, or like configuration management. It could be Chef, Puppet, or Octopus, or whatever the tool you use. It very well integrates with those. So let's go and take a look at quick one of the DSC configuration which we're going to use now. So this is the configuration file which is going to be used in here. So if you look, the configuration file is embedded with the Octopus parameters, which makes easier when you try to apply the DSC configuration in Octopus. So you don't have to create variables, pass parameters. So you could use the Octopus parameters within the DSC resources, and it helps you to write more organized scripts, DSC configuration scripts. So we enabling few features, and we making sure those features are available on the web servers. So and then we, as part of this DSC resource, we're removing the default application and the default apples as well. So if you look into this, once this DSC is applied, you can see you can do a get Windows features. I don't know. Okay, so basically you can see all the list of features which are installed, which are enabled on the particular server which you just applied the DSC configuration. So that's again, you do that. So you apply the DSC configurations using the DSC project which we have in here, and then you can deploy to this, and it goes in and does all the checks whether the feature is present, or if it is not present, then it enables those features for you. And then it also maintains the local configuration to be intact all the time. There is if there is a drift, then it puts back those features in place. So yeah, and then quickly moving on. So these are a few things which you could do. These are the basic things which you could do through DSC, or you could write custom resources if you want to write, and then use them as part of this digital pipeline to apply more complex configurations to the server. Either if you want to install an MSI, or you want to make sure a particular registry key is present, whatever the complex features you want to, you could write your own ones. Next one is actually about Octopus Deploy. It's Octopus Deploy is basically developed for .NET developers. So is there how many .NET developers we have in the room? Or all right, that's good. So we have a in Octopus Deploy. It's very good in creating a pipeline view of different projects, right? So So it could, using Octopus Deploy, you could deploy either it could be a web application, it could be a Windows service, or it could be a SQL Server database, or any different kinds of applications you could deploy with it. And it's got, you could have a, okay. You could you could create a unified deployment process where you can repeat the deployment process over and over again in all different environments in a similar way, rather than, for example, if on the Windows world, I think since most of our .NET developers, if you ask me to go and enable some features and do that through a UI, we just click the button, and if somebody else, if Bob has to do something, the similar thing, and you might go and do it in the command line, so it is not same. So this gives you a unified deployment model to enable your digital pipeline in more robust manner. And also, it gives you variable scoping, wherein you create a variable in your app config. You got a variable set, and then if it is different on each and every environment, then you could scope them specific to your environments. So you never have to worry about, okay, this key I did mention to operations, or you did put it in the change request or run book, it's not been applied properly. So these problems will disappear. And it's got a concept of step templates where it's split into smaller modules where you could create templates to during your deployment activities. Like, for example, if you want to create a cloud service, then you could have a template which creates a cloud service, and then you could deploy a cloud service, and then you could have a template to say, okay, I need to scale this instance, so scaling the cloud service, you could apply through a template. So it's all smaller modules which could be used across multiple projects. So if you're in an organization where you got like many different teams and you want to create templates which can be used across the projects, and it has got a concept of script modules which you could create them. Is again a PowerShell script module which you could apply onto a particular project, and it runs before each and every process step is executed, so that you could get all the, in this instance, we're using a script module to initialize the authentication of Azure. So, which you don't have to create a template where you create the same code again and again, so that instead of that, you could have a script module, include it in the project, and then it deals with it for you. So it's a common module. And then collaboration, I think there are quite a lot of talks we talked about collaboration, is because when a person is doing a deployment or you having a change needs to be implemented in a production environment, people, if you're dealing with change requests, emails, and different medium of communication, the collaboration gets very difficult. So this gives you a nice view wherein you could put a manual intervention step to say, okay, I need approval from so-and-so team, so can you please approve this deployment? And then it can go and do different things. And after a few steps, and when it gets to database deployment or stuff like that, you can say, okay, can a DB person can review the changes. So probably, I don't know how many people still write heavy rollback scripts for your database deployments. Is anyone does that? Like whenever you create SQL scripts, you create rollback scripts, right? No? Yes? No? No. So you don't plan for rollback. It's always roll forward. Yeah? Okay, that's good. Roll forward is good, but you still have to consider the rollback, because some places they do write a quite heavy rollback script, because if something goes wrong, they're scared, they want to roll back. They don't want to roll forward fix. The reason why they want to roll back is, for roll forward fix, you need to have a mechanism of a complete digital pipeline wherein you check in a code, in another 10 minutes you should have the production deployable code, which means it again comes down to the state where you need to have your unit tests, you need to have your integration tests, you need to have your acceptance test, all of these things available and running appropriately. Because sometimes people do, how many write integration tests? Yeah. Do you define what the integration test boundary is? Because sometimes I've seen people want to run an integration test, but still they write whether the third API is they have not changed the version. But that's something, checking the version of an API, which is not right. So you need to balance that integration test. And Octopus Deploy is heavily API driven, and you could see everything through API, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So you could automate on top of Octopus Deploy by using the API, and you could produce reports. And it does quite integrate very well with Azure support, and it's got quite nice auditing views where when a deployment happened, who has approved the deployment, and all different orchestration pieces is got within it. Because as a developer, I think in the room, we want to write code and then we want to ship them as quickly as possible. We don't want to write a code and then when it gets into a test environment and people say, oh no, it doesn't work. You don't want to keep debugging the same code again and again. Because having all the environment provisioning, as we've seen before, like source controlling them, which means it's all audited, it's all reported properly, and then you provision them and you run appropriate tests to make sure your digital pipeline is in the correct model. So let's quickly have a look at deploying an application. So we got a website, which is, I think, so in UAT we haven't deployed it yet, so we will check the test website. So we got this website up and running. So now let's go and deploy a new. So as you can see the environment is displayed with the version number is 16. And if we go into the website, so that's 16 is what deployed. Let's go and deploy the 21 version. So because 20 we don't want, just 21 is what we need. So let's go and deploy now. So while that's running, let's have a look at the variables. So we're passing the environment from the Octopus environment variables. So you could use the system variables in conjunction with your own custom variables. So it gives you that flexibility of mixing system variables with the user variables. And also you could output a variable from a step from a process step to the next step, so that you have that series of flow of data between steps as well during the deployment. So that's quick. It's been deployed now, and we did a fix and it's been deployed. So now if you refresh, you should be able to see the version 21. Hope so. Yeah, there you go. So we just deployed a website so easily. So this is the beauty, where you have to have the process step very rigid so that you could repeat over and over, and at some point you could say, okay, I'll schedule the deployment and then you can go home, so that you don't have to be called in the middle of the night where this thing didn't work because of so and so reason, where the environment was not replicated as it was in production. So if you look in here, when I provisioned UAT, before provisioning UAT, there wasn't no tentacles in there. And now, if you look, the difference is, in test environment, you got roles which is applied to app and web server, because you scale down with a similar infrastructure. You scale down where you have got a different roles. But in here, you could change the roles while doing the provisioning. So it's it gives you nice view about this. And there are different types of deployment strategies you could So let's go and have a look and promote the release what we did just now. So 21 release, we got the UAT environment up and running. Let's go and promote this and deploy to that UAT environment. So UAT environment, we didn't add a site. And the same we will do with the Azure. We will deploy 21 to production. So it's provisioning a Azure resource group in production. So while that's happening, let's go and take a look at Azure portal. You have to go through multiple sign-in page. That's normal, yeah. So all the stuff which we have seen now is using provisioning through ARM template is all on V2, so you can't really see them on the old Azure portal, and you can see only on the new Azure portal. So while you go in here, and then we're going to have a look quickly on the resource groups. Where you can see those, just ignore those. So you can see the different types of resource groups, UAT, test, and production. All these are containers of the complete environment for its own environment, including network, security groups, and also all different storage accounts which is required for that particular environment. So if you go and take a look in one of the test environment, so you can see all these resources in here, DB, database, test database in there. And since we just kicked off the production environment, it will be a little interesting to see what's in the production. So you already got the provision. It's now you can see the status. It's deploying now. So if you ever want to go and have a look at the log, so you can always go and check the audit logs, so which will tell you what's happening at the moment. And also it gives you a view of from which user it's been kicked off, the deployment has been kicked off. So you could produce reports based on this. For Octopus Deploy, you could create a user wherein it does the provisioning. Because in V1, I think you could use the publish settings file to connect to the Azure account and do all your stuff. But in V2, you need to use adding the Azure account credentials. So if you want to script that, you can do it only if you got an ID with on Outlook, on Microsoft.com ID, or it should be your organization ID. Could be, yeah. If you got your own ID, then you can't script that because it does have that ability that you can't. It doesn't allow you to script. So the next thing is to talk about. What is that? Yeah. Oops, sorry. I've been switching a lot, so let's talk about different types of deployment, not in detail. So you could do using Octopus, you could do rolling deployments, canary deployments, blue-green deployments, and multi-tenant is still, I think, is still not out properly, so you can't actually do with 3.1. Yes, and also I wanted to touch up a little bit on the config management, because since we've seen now about how to source control the infrastructure and how you could deploy applications from one environment to other environments, and while all these things are happening, you need to make sure the config management is intact. So for example, developers have app key settings in the config file, and traditionally you will have a release config or a test config, whatever config, and then you will be testing in set of servers which you been allocated by the operations team or whatever the new DevOps team people call it as. So infrastructure team, they maintain the in the spreadsheets or visual diagrams what are the configuration values for the infrastructure, how the network is done, how security groups and all sort of stuff. And it's basically XML based, is between the deployment team or release team. They maintain a XML based and do stuffs. And the support team, usually you create a support document for them, put a section of the key, okay, this key does this key does this. So it's basically, it gives you, you have to do a lot of documentation, you have to relay with different teams to make all these config management and a big agenda in delivering an application change into a production environment. So it's always good to have a one config management strategy for all different teams to use. So in this case, as you've seen, we are using in Octopus, we are using variable sets to share the, if you go in here, you got variable sets defined, which is the infrastructure variable sets, and has got all the server specific information and all the URL, everything. So what you could do is you could, this variable set is being used in the projects, in the provisioning of the Azure resources, as well as it's used in deploying the applications as well. I think, no, sorry, it's used in deploying the database. Yeah, so you could have a common variable set, and you could share that between two different ones, because this application doesn't use the database, so there is no need to include just a simple application. And also, as I touched upon a little bit about having to view the APIs from Octopus. So we got the Postman. Where's Postman? So if you want to query the machine names or environments, so let's go one by one. Let's see if I want to query all the environments which is in there. So you can see the list of all environments in a JSON format again. So it's as you see more of JSON stuff in there, which is quite plain and simple to understand and easy to interrupt between the data between different systems, and you could generate reports if you want to, or let's say when you are doing an audit, you can pull the information in this way as well. If you can write a simple application if you want to. So after having all this, and now we have deployed. Oh, it's failed. So what can go wrong in the deployment? Okay, it's because we haven't applied the DSC resources, so it's failing. So we have to go and apply the DSC resource before we deploy. So we haven't deployed the DSC resource, so let's go and deploy the DSC resource. So this is the kind of thing where you could easily predict what's happening, and you can chain all this in an orchestration. You could use TeamCity to orchestrate everything and chain the builds so that it can kick off things in a serious manner if you want to, because some of the things where you provision the machine and you have to configure the server for the application to run, and then you deploy the application. So you can't do the other way around. And also when it becomes interesting when it comes to database, like how many of you have used Octopus to deploy? Because I've seen quite a few people using Octopus to deploy database. Okay. So Redgate have done quite nice step templates and TeamCity plugins to generate your packages and generate your packages as a NuGet database, as a NuGet package, and apply them to different environments. So probably I might not have time to showcase that. If anybody is interested, I'm happy to showcase after the session. After all this, so we have seen quite a lot of source controlling the provisioning of infrastructure and applying the DSC to configure the servers as it is required to be, and also we've seen creating a standardized step templates, process steps to deploy a website to various environments with various variable sets as you go through the different environments. So after doing all this, what does good look like? So this is what we want, right? So you have to deploy to a production site, but you don't bring the business down. So if you're taking a website down for your deployment of a code, a simple change or fix, then it is something you need to start looking into your digital pipeline, what it is, what's making you to bring that. Okay, I think I'm nearly done, but a little bit of hiccups in there during the demo. Apart from that, you have any questions? Yep. Yes, because I picked this example because it's Microsoft. So you could do the similar thing in Azure, in AWS as well. Yes.
So how exactly does this chaining you said works? For example, you have those, you want to deploy, for example, test set, right? And you have dependencies on the database, the configuration you said, and the application. You need the proper cycle of the deployment. How do you do this? How do you configure this cycle?
So basically, if you look, Octopus doesn't provide you an option to chain different projects. So this is where you could use tools like JetBrains, tools like TeamCity to chain your builds, and then it's got plugin to create a release or deploy a release, and then you can deploy them, you can chain them in that way, so that when you run a build to deploy, it checks whether it's done the provisioning, it's done the code build, you got the package, and then it deploys the database, it deploys your code. So that way you could chain them. So there is a small survey. I'll put up a link in there. If you got some time, you can fill that. So that will give you some idea of what are the things we do consider when putting a digital pipeline in place for any organization. There are so many other things, because this talk was really about how we made a consistent environment. Because we need to take the pain off from the developers, that you don't want to go back and debug the same thing and tell testers, oh, your environment is wrong. You don't want to spend hours and hours. Yeah.
Another question, when you have, for example, production which is ARM, and you would like to have step-by-step update, for example.
Yeah, that's the rolling deployment you could do. Yeah. So that I can walk you through after the session if you want to know a bit more about it. Yeah.
So, but there are some trainings, etc., some resources. Is it like you have to make custom scripts for that, or you just use the UI for that?
It depends on what your actual requirements are, because I can't really answer this question straight away, but it can vary from each case-by-case basis. That's it. Thank you.